Education.
Thank you, sir. In the shadow of Oakden, the Marshall Liberal Government has been committed to upholding the rights of all vulnerable adults, ensuring that they are able to live a life free from abuse and neglect. This is an important right for all South Australians. All vulnerable adults deserve to have their rights safeguarded, to live a life of dignity and autonomy as far as is possible or practical. That's why, in the lead-up to the state election in March 2018, the Liberal Party made a commitment to introduce legislation into the Parliament within our first 100 days of forming government. 2011, on the other hand, legislative reform in relation to adult safeguarding was raised in the findings of the Closing the Gaps report written by Professor Wendy Lacey. The former government failed to act over 7 years. This government acted within 100 days. And that unit established with an important legislative function which focuses prevention and early intervention. When the bill was passed in 2018, it was proposed that the definition of a prescribed vulnerable adult within the transitional provision of the Ageing and Adult Safeguarding Act 1995 be expanded to include vulnerable adults living with a disability from the 1st of October 2022. The transitional provision was included to ensure that as a new service with unknown service demand, it was not overwhelmed, and to allow the unit time to establish appropriate and effective client pathways and procedures. As a result of ongoing promotion and strengthened relationships with organisations across a range of sectors, awareness of the unit has increased considerably. I think some members have talked about it in their newsletters, and anyone who hasn't should. This, as well as the implications on older people as a result of isolation for COVID-19, has meant that the number of reports to the unit has increased, as has the complexity and the time spent on individual cases. The majority of reports made to the unit involve instances of financial abuse, often coupled with emotional and/or psychological abuse. However, there has been a noticeable recent rise in the number of reports relating to neglect, which the unit is well placed to investigate and respond to. In response to the tragic death of Anne-Marie Smith, the Minister for Human Services established a safeguarding task force co-chaired by Dr David Caudry and Ms Kelly Vincent. The purpose of the task force was to examine existing gaps and areas that need strengthening in safeguarding arrangements for people living with a disability, and to provide recommendations to the state government for immediate reform. The task force's final report, presented to the government on the 31st of July 2020, recommended extending, and I quote, the scope of the adult safeguarding units to include younger adults at risk of abuse prior to 2022, commencing with people with disabilities. End quote. Within a week of the final report being received, the government promulgated a notice in the Gazette which expanded the adult safeguarding unit's legal mandate to enable it to respond to reports of abuse of adults living with a disability effective as of the 1st of October 2020, some 6 weeks ago. Expanding the legal mandate aligns with community expectations that vulnerable adults with a disability are safe and have the support that they require. The government's swift and strong response to the task force's recommendations make the amendments put forward in this bill redundant, no longer necessary. For those who are interested, the Gazettal is titled "A Declaration by the Minister for Health and Wellbeing, Prescribed Vulnerable Adults." It's dated the 3rd of August 2020.